Well, hello everyone. Welcome. Good afternoon. Uh, well, it looks like more people are going to be home the next 2 to 4 weeks. Who knows? With the new pandemic rules and lockdowns. So I guess it's good at least to have the opportunity to study a little bit of Torah these difficult times and to get together virtually. So far, we welcome David Wilder and Rocky Pollock. Thank you for being there. Unfortunately, my people counter is not working today, so I don't know how many people I have connected. And I'm too lazy to actually shut it down and start it again. So we'll see. We'll see. Actually, it doesn't really matter. Even if it's only one of you there, I'm happy and thrilled to be here sharing a teaching of this week's Parsha with all of you. So, we're going to study today Parshat Chayei Sarah. We're still in the book of Genesis. And very interesting Parsha talking about the death of our matriarch Sarah, but also about the death of our patriarch Abraham towards the end of the Parsha. And the rabbis notice that it is interesting that the name of the Parsha is Chayei Sarah, the life of Sarah, when in reality it's talking about the death of Sarah. This famous verse is commonly used in eulogies to emphasize the belief that there is a life beyond this life. And also when somebody dies, when somebody passes away, it's also an opportunity to review the life of the person, to see the way that life inspired us, touched us, and made us sometimes the way we are. So lots to talk about just that little verse, Chayei Sarah, the life of Sarah. But that's not exactly what I'm going to, that's not the angle for today's class. Welcome, Judy. Great that you're here. Probably people on YouTube are saying, what is the rabbi talking about? Well, Judy is actually sending a message from Facebook. And unfortunately, as my understanding is Facebook, I think it does go to YouTube. So people from YouTube can see the messages. But whoever is typing messages on YouTube, don't go to Facebook. So if you're on Facebook, you won't see David Wilder and Rocky Pollock messaging. One of the limitations of this system, but in my computer, I have a special app that combines all the different platforms so I can see all the messages and what. So welcome, Judy. Thank you for being there. So I said, I won't be talking about the life of Sarah specifically. That's usually something you are going to learn, unfortunately, by going to funerals. It's a very common source. Though we are going to talk a little bit about what happened there, but not from that point of view. Okay, so I think it's time for us to start exploring the Parsha. So I'm going to take myself magically to the text. And this is the very first verse that I want to share with you out of many. It's out of order. It's not necessarily the very, very, very beginning of the Parsha, but it's talking about the moment when Abraham needed to buy a plot for Sarah. This is the first time that we read in the Torah about the death of one of our patriarchs, in this case the matriarch. Abraham didn't have a plot to bury Sarah. So we know that what happened even in these days, when somebody dies, the family will take the responsibility to go and purchase a plot in a Jewish cemetery. Now, the interesting thing is the rabbis say that there is a rule, a law, is actually halacha for somebody who suffered the death of a loved one and is a close relative. And when I say close relative, from the halachic point of view, I'm talking about mother, father, son, daughter, brother, sister, and spouse. Okay, one of those 7 people dies, the mourner does not have to fulfill any of the ritual mitzvot. So you don't have to go to shul, you don't have to put on tefillin, you don't have to do many things. And one of the explanation of why it's that is so people won't have any kind of impediment to make arrangement for the funeral as soon as possible. Because can you imagine if you're in a situation where you have to choose between going to the synagogue to talk to a funeral director to arrange for a funeral, or to go to synagogue to daven Shachrit, Mincha, Mariv? This is nonsense, right? But why do we have to put people in that situation? So the rabbi said, you don't have to do any of that. You have to make all the funerals arrangements as soon as possible. So that's exactly what we do. We learned this from Abraham, that he did this right away. So it says in Genesis 23:16, Abraham got to the point of what Ephron had said, so he weighed out for Ephron the amount of money that he had specified in the presence of the sons of Het, 400 silver shekels of the weight accepted among merchants. So what happened is Abraham went to talk to this guy. His name was Ephron. Hi, Rabbi Marcelo Cormis is here from the United States. Where are you, Marcelo? Cincinnati? I don't remember. Somewhere in the United States. But welcome to the class. So Abraham went right away to buy this plot. It was a very short negotiation, and the specified amount of money was 400 silver shekels, which Abraham did not actually try to negotiate. Very interesting. Because Abraham was not shy to even negotiate with God. Remember when God wanted to destroy Sodom? And Abraham started negotiation with God, but with Ephron, there was no negotiation whatsoever. This man said, I want 400 shekels. And Abraham said, don't say anymore. I'm going to give you those 400 shekels. Connecticut, yes. I knew that it was with a C, but I couldn't remember the rest. So, let's see. So this is what happened. So he paid the 400 silver shekels to Ephron to get the plot for Sarah. Now it's interesting because the rabbis are trying to find in this number, in the 400 silver shekels, something that is beyond the pshat, beyond the literal understanding of the verse. One approach that you might have when you read this verse, if you are into pshat, into the literal meaning, is to try, for example, to calculate how much 400 silver shekels will be in these days. Nothing wrong with that. I'm not sure how that will make your life any better, but nothing wrong with that. If you go to different interpretation of the parsha, you will actually see some rabbis who actually argue how much we are talking about here. Some rabbis will say, it wasn't a big amount of money. Some others said, no, this was actually a ridiculously big amount of money. But that's what happened when you study the pshat, the literal meaning of the verse. But the rabbis try to go a step further, and they are going to talk about this number of being symbolic of something else. These 400 silver shekels have a hidden message. So let's get into it. And before to do that, we have to jump into this verse in Leviticus that is also talking about shekels. And it says, and if a man consecrates some of the field of his inherited property to the Lord, the valuation should be according to its sowing. An area which require a homer of barley seeds at 50 silver shekels. You're probably wondering, so what's the connection between this verse and the previous one? That's an excellent question. So let's invite another rabbi to answer that question. So let's read what Rabbi Yitzchak ben Yehuda Levi of France said in the 13th century. He said, as per Leviticus 27:16, remember this one here, a field the size of a Beit Kur, which is equivalent of 75,000 square cubits, represents a value of 50 silver shekel. Thus, the size of the field which Abraham purchased for 400 silver shekels was 8 kur, or 600,000 square cubits. A square cubit, approximately 20 inches by 20 inches, is the space occupied by a single person. That, I guess that's a normal size person. This means that Abraham purchased a plot of land that provides an individual space for each of the 600 souls of Israel. That's beautiful. What is this business of the 600 souls of Israel? You will see when we have different census in the Torah. After the Exodus, this number of about 600,000 adults is going to come a few times in the Torah. So from there, the rabbis always talk about the 600 souls of Israel as a symbolic concept. Oh, thank you, Rabbi Marcelo. So this number became symbolic, and you are going to find it in different places of rabbinic literature when the rabbis always talk about the 600,000 souls of Israel. So according to this midrash, Abraham decided to buy that plot because it represents a space for every single Jewish soul, not just present, but future. The same concept will be presented whenever we receive the Torah in Mount Sinai, that they say that there were 600 souls receiving that Torah, but those 600 souls represent not just that generation, but also future generations. And that is one way, for example, that we understand people who convert to Judaism, that those were born technically with that Jewish soul, but they needed to find their way back into Judaism, and that's why they feel attracted by Judaism and they pursue a formal conversion. So it's not that their soul changed when they convert to Judaism, they found their way back. Why that happened that way? That's beyond the scope of this class, but there is also an argument used when we understand why somebody wants to convert to Judaism. Now, let's continue with the same concept of the 600,000 souls, because there is more about that. And for this, we are going to invite the Lubavitcher Rebbe, who says the following. Our sages tell us that the Torah contains 600,000 letters. Well, actually, it's more like 300,000, but it's counting also the spaces between the letters. For each Jew possesses something of the Torah. The same is true of the land of Israel. Israel is the eternal inheritance of the Jewish people, equally the property of every individual Jew. And so it has been from the very first moment of Jewish ownership of the Holy Land. The first plot of land obtained by the first Jew included a share for every Jewish soul, which is interesting. In these days that sometimes we fight among ourselves in Israel and outside Israel. And I love this kind of midrashim that it says that Israel is not property of one single ideology or view of the Torah, but we should feel that we all have a space there. We all have our symbolic or literal space in Israel, and we shouldn't feel bad or intimidated into voicing our opinion on what Judaism should look like and how we should look our Jewish lives. So it's a very interesting concept, and how Abraham already created this in advance, where we can feel that we all have space in Jewish life. Yeah. Any comments? The chat is very quiet today, except for Rabbi Kormis. David, Rocky, Judy? Nothing? Okay, so let's continue now with another part of this parsha that is talking about the moment when Abraham decided that Isaac was old enough he should get a wife, he should get married, but Rocky Paul. So Shari has no business selling plots. Why not? It says there, that people need to buy plots, so we should sell them, right? I don't know if we should charge him 400 silver shekels, but by providing people with plots, we are helping them fulfill the mitzvah of buying a plot. So it's a win-win. Now, let's go to this thing. I like the following story. It's the story of Eliezer. So I was saying that Sarah died. Abraham looked at Isaac. He was old enough. He needed a wife. But Abraham didn't want Isaac to leave the house and to go somewhere else to find a wife, because it looks like the women around the places where they lived, Abraham didn't like the women of the place, so he wanted someone from his own homeland. So he's going to send not Isaac there, but Eliezer, his servant, to go to his homeland. Remember previous parsha when we read the Lech Lecha, when Abraham left that place? But it looks like people there, they were idolaters, but maybe good people. So Abraham wanted to send Eliezer there, get a wife, come back. So, Rocky, you said, but they are paid for by Abraham. I don't think so. No, that would be good though, but no. I don't think what that would pass if you run it by the board, right? So again, Eliezer goes there and he wanted to find the right person for Isaac. So he created this scheme where he said the right person will be the one who will offer water to me and to my animals. Because if you will show that the person who comes right to you to offer you water and to offer water for the animals, it will be a person who cares for somebody else. And that for Eliezer would be the perfect proof that that person will be perfect for Abraham's son. So let's see what happened here. It said, so the man came into the house, and Laban ungirded the camels and gave him straw and provender for the camels and water to wash his feet and the feet of the men who were with him. Then food was set before him to eat, but he said, I will not eat until I told my errand. And he said, speak on. So he said, I am Abraham's servant. So this is what happened after. He selected this girl who came to him. Her name was Rebecca. And now it was time to negotiate the shidduch. That was the way it was done back in the day. So now we can understand a few things that why Eliezer wanted that quality into somebody else. You see, first, he was also he didn't want to talk about anything until he fed the animals, and then he didn't eat himself. Then he wanted to say why he was there, first business, and then we can all eat together. But look at the right order here. First he fed the animals, then he explained his business, and after that Eliezer fed himself. And that was a quality also that he wanted to find in somebody else, because that was what he learned in Abraham's house. So he wanted somebody else who would be a good fit for that kind of mentality. This is an amazing, amazing thing. Because sometimes when we are looking for a spouse, a partner, what is the first thing that we are looking for in another person? And according to this text, the first thing should be what kind of values that person has. Because you see, sometimes we get fooled and confused and dizzy by beauty. It's usually the first thing people notice in other people is beauty. We search for beauty. But then beauty may stay or may fade out. But values are something that, at least in theory, should stay with you all the time. Values are what guide you in this life. So Eliezer wanted to be sure to find somebody that has values. It's interesting. How do you know if somebody has good values? Is that person someone who cares about somebody else, not just people, but also for animals? And he found that on Rebecca, and we see here that that was also his own values. Now, there is something else that the rabbis learned from this text. That you will see here, we read it in the Midrash, that it says, first he fed the animals and afterwards he was served food. And there we learn that it's forbidden for a person to taste anything until he feeds his animals. It's a very interesting thing. And by the way, this is something that I had to get used to it, because a few years ago, somebody, it's a friend of the family, decided to bring a present for my son, who was 5 at the time. And the present was a beautiful aquarium. You can imagine my face when I got that. We don't have animals in the house because it's a big responsibility. If you have an animal, it's a big responsibility, right? And I know that my son, he was 5, he was not ready at all to take care of any kind of pet. And we got these complete aquariums with gift certificates to go pick up the fish at the store. And, okay, so guess who ended up taking care of the aquarium? Follow the finger. That would be me. So I got used to every morning, before I do anything else, I have to go and feed the fish. And after I do that, I can go and make coffee, prepare breakfast, and so forth. And here you go. This is something I have to get used to. And because it's very easy to neglect an animal, because it's what are the fish going to do? Are they going to complain? They're going to start yelling? No. They're powerless. They're powerless, and I am in total control. So if I believe that's one of the way to show where people's values are. Because first you take care of somebody who is powerless, who if you're not there for them, they're gonna die. So that shows you where your heart is. And then you take care of yourself. Because if you don't eat right away, if you wait 15 minutes, nothing is gonna happen to you. So it's a wonderful, wonderful story. And so, but then the Midrash has great things to say about Eliezer, this servant of Abraham, and the kind of values that he had. And basically, he learned these values by living in the same place of Abraham. He wasn't necessarily a Torah student of Abraham, but nevertheless, he learned all these beautiful qualities from him. Because of that, the rabbis say Rabbi Acha, the talk of the servants of the fathers is more desirable than the Torah scholarship of the children. For Eliezer's story, which takes up 2 or 3 pages in the Torah, is twice recounted. So the whole story of the camels and everything is presented twice in the Torah, while many principles of Torah law are conveyed with a single word or letter. This is a wonderful thing. Just how much we can learn not because we attend to a lecture, but because we have a good mentor. And this is something that I mentioned many times in the past, how important it is for us to find a mentor. And the Torah will say that, the rabbis will say that it's very important for us to find a rabbi who eventually becomes our mentor. But I believe that there are many ways to having mentors in our lives. And that's not necessarily by attending lectures, but it's by being inspired by the way that other people do certain things. And I mentioned that one of the ways we have to increase our wisdom in this world is by having a good mentor. Remember the 3 M's to increase your wisdom? That there were mistakes, right? You make a mistake, you learn from a mistake. Or money, because sometimes you can buy wisdom. You can buy books, classes, or whatever, but also the M for mentors. The mentors will inspire you beyond the classroom to make you a wonderful person. This is what happened with Eliezer, who wasn't necessarily a student of Abraham, but nevertheless, he was inspired by Abraham, and he became a wise person and an important character of the Torah himself. So, okay. So now let's go back to the beginning. I love Rocky. M for Rabbi Maths. Okay, that will be the fourth M to increase your wisdom then. Yeah. Funny. Let's go back to the beginning. Talking about the first verse of the Parsha. It says, Chayei Sarah 100 shana ו20 shana ו7 shanim shnei Chayei Sarah. Sarah's lifetime was 100 years, 20 years and 7 years, the years of Sarah's life. Now, it's very interesting the way the age is described in the Torah. You see, it doesn't say 127. It said 120 and 7. It's almost like going to the bank when they never put, I don't know if you ever notice, the teller will never write the number, will write what kind of bills you're giving them. So this is pretty much the same. So it's 100, it's 20, and it's 7. And oh, Shelly's here. Sorry to be late. You're not late. This is like the show starts when you come, right? You can always rewind and start from the beginning. Oh, by the way, this is something that I meant to tell you before, that you, I hope you won't do it because it's confusing. YouTube changed now. So you can actually rewind or pause the class, and then when you click, it will continue from where you pause it, right? But the thing is, the chat doesn't get paused. It's like independent. So people will be talking about things and they will say, what are they talking about? Well, it's because you might be in a different place of the class if you decided to rewind or you decided to pause it and then you resume the class. Okay? So be warned about that if you ever do that. That it might be confusing for some people because the chat keeps going on from whatever we are right now. Okay, so going here, so the rabbis try to explain why Sarah, the Torah says 120 and 7. It would say, the rabbis explain that shows about how perfect her life was, because 7 represents childhood, 20 represents halfway in life, and then the 100 represents the elderly part of her life, and every part was lived with passion and to the fullest, and that was to Sarah's merit. That's why we shouldn't say just 127, no, because every stage of the life of Sarah was lived to the fullest. That's one explanation of why the Torah presents the life of Sarah as 120 and 7. But we're going to see something very interesting in a few minutes. That this number 127 appeared in another book of the Bible. Not related to an age. It's more related to a place. So, trivia question for you. Let's see if you can remember that before I say it. It's coming. Just try to think. Where else in the Bible, not in the Torah, in the Bible, we read about the number 127, and you will see that the rabbi said that the two are connected. So, but I want to bring something that Midrash Rabbah says. He said, why was it necessary to say the years of Sarah's life once again at the end of the verse? It's not one, it's once. Let me correct this. At the end of the verse. It is to tell you that the lives of the righteous are beloved before the omnipresent, both in this world and in the world to come. So against the rabbis, it's like they believe that there is proof of the world to come in that opening verse of the Parsha. This is something that is being controversial. Now we take it as a granted that we believe, that the Torah is talking about, of course, the world to come, the life after this life. But the question is, where is exactly the Torah talking about that? Nowhere specifically or explicitly, but the rabbis believe that everywhere is implied that there is a world to come, even if it doesn't say it explicitly. So this is one of those places. When it says Sarah's lifetime, which I know in English sounds different, but if you see in Hebrew, it said, Vehayu Chayei Sarah, here. The life of Sarah, Chayei Sarah, which is the same, even if you don't read Hebrew, you can see this visually, that this place here is the same here. So that expression, Chayei Sarah, the life of Sarah, appeared twice. So that's why the rabbis explain that it appears twice, because it's talking about this life and the life after this life, which is the life on the Olam Haba, the world to come. That's the way we call it. So I wanted to mention that is very interesting. And indeed, there is a repetition that is unnecessary. And every time that there's something unnecessary in the Torah, and because we know that there are no mistakes in the Torah, it's not that the scribe made a mistake, it's there on purpose. So what other reason will be to repeat this phrase? That's the question so rabbis ask. And the answer is to make it clear that we are talking about this world and the next world. Let's continue with that. Also, another thing about this is also from Midrash Rabbah. It is written, the sun rises and the sun sets. Ha, David Wilder. Spoiler, yes, that's correct. 120 lines of Achashverosh and Megillat Esther. Right? Purim, we read that. Vayehi imei Achashverosh, Achashverosh, molech od ved. Right? Yes, that was the 127 provinces mentioned there. And that Esther actually became the queen over 127 provinces, because she married Achashverosh, who owned these 127 provinces. So eventually she became the queen over 127 provinces. So the number 127 became also attached to Esther. So now all of a sudden we see that Esther and Sarah are somehow connected. So that will be the next question. How are they connected? It's coming next. Let's see who knows that before I say it. Okay, but let's go back to Midrash Rabbah. It is written, the sun rises and the sun sets. And that's in Ecclesiastes, chapter 1, verse 5. Rabbi Abba Bat Kahana said, do we not know that the sun rises and the sun sets? That's Ecclesiastes tell us that. We know that. What point is the scripture trying to make with this obvious fact? Rather, this verse should be understood as a metaphor, saying that before the Holy One, blessed is He, causes the sunset of one leading righteous figure, He brings about the sunrise of another leading righteous figure, so that no generation is ever left without a righteous leader. Before the Holy One, blessed is He, brought about the sunset of Moses. He brought the sunrise of Joshua. And before the Holy One, blessed is He, brought about the sunset of Sarah. He first caused the son of Rebekah to rise. So that's why, according to the Midrash, we read about both episodes on the same parsha. We read about the death of Sarah, but also about Isaac marrying Rebekah, which was already born many years ago. So she was ready to be the matriarch before Sarah died. And that was clear because right after she died, Eliezer goes to where Rebekah lived, and he found out how wonderful she was, how wonderful values she had, and that all came to her before Sarah died. So this is a wonderful principle of Jewish faith, because sometimes the departure of a leader is frightening. It's frightening when we don't know who is going to come after. And sometimes we look around and we see that whoever is next in line is so different and with such different approach. But that's basically what this text is saying, is we have to have faith that everything is in God's hands. That if a leader is necessary for an organization, even if that leader is gone, another leader will come. And we have to have faith that is all in God's plan. Sometimes we don't see it how, because we see sometimes bad things done by leaders, and how is that possible? We don't know how. But it brings hope to know that at the end it's all in God's hand. Have faith. Have faith that that's God's intention. Nothing escapes to God's control. Because this is the thing. You can either believe that God is in control or not. And that's fine. That's fine with that. Some people really believe that God controls the world, and people believe that no. But if you believe that God is in control, then you can't really say that God is in control of everything, well, except for that. I don't know, that doesn't make much sense to me to think it that way, that God is in control of everything except for that. Either God is in control or not. Okay? Maybe we can talk about that different time. Complex topic about the approach of how God connects with this world. Yeah. But this says, it's very interesting saying that Rebekah was already appointed before the death of Sarah. Now, the connection between the two. Rabbi Akiva was sitting and expounding the Torah, and he saw that the audience was dozing off. Careful, Rocky Pollack, with jokes that you make there. So he wished to wake them up by switching to more interesting topics. So he said, why was Esther made a ruler over 127 provinces? What merit did she have? He said, let Esther, who was the descendant of Sarah, who lived 127 years, come and rule over 127 provinces. Because she conducted herself with modesty and righteousness like Sarah, so she was granted reward corresponding to Sarah's lifespan. So here is the connection, according to Rabbi Akiva, of the two, that Esther was almost like a a modern day Sarah. She wasn't exactly like Sarah because the context, the world was different, but she did what has to be done in the way that Sarah did it back in the day. You said, David, well, I used to read the Megillah in another life. Yeah, I guess. But it's, in fact, the whole book of Esther, I believe it has a lot of content that reflects the belief on reincarnation. I don't know if you ever noticed that. For example, that it makes it very clear that Mordecai seems to be connected to King Saul. Remember, King Saul failed to kill the king of Amalek, and eventually that king of Amalek got a few more days of life, and according to the rabbis, he fathered more children, so that's why the seed of Amalek was not destroyed by Saul when God asked him to do that. And then in the future, what happened is we have Haman, who is a descendant of Amalek. He's actually described as an Amalekite. So we have this connection of Mordecai to Saul, Haman to Agag, the king of Amalek. So it's almost like the story continues many generations after, and there seems to be an implication that they are almost like reincarnated souls because there were some unfinished business at the time of Saul and Agag. So the same seems to be implied here with Esther being somehow a continuation of the life of Sarah. Very interesting book of the Book of Esther, by the way. One of my favorite books to read and to understand at different levels. They are beautiful Kabbalistic teachings about the Book of Esther. And it's interesting because being the book without the name of God, it's not written anywhere. And nevertheless, it has all these beautiful hidden messages. The same way that the rabbis will say, well, it's not that the name of God is not written, it's not explicitly written, it's implied, it's hidden. If you know where to look for, you are going to find God even in that story. Beautiful book. Hopefully, we are going to study that close to Purim, but we are not there yet. We have to pass Hanukkah first. Let's continue. Let's try to explain now why Rabbi Akiva used that story to wake up his bored students. Rabbi Akiva was pointing out that for each one of Sarah's perfect years of service to Hashem, her descendant Esther merited to rule over a province. Each day then was worth a town, and each hour a district. If such tremendous reward is a direct outgrowth of serving Hashem, how it is possible for one to slip away precious moments during a Torah discourse? That's for all of you. Rabbi Akiva sought to impress upon his audience the importance of every moment of life spent engaged in Torah study and the service of Hashem, for one cannot imagine the outstanding reward that one and one's descendants will receive for each and every moment involved in Torah study. Beautiful teaching. I think it's wonderful to understand this, how important it is to study Torah in our lives. I don't know if you remember the Midrash that we read about the angel touching the lip of the baby. It said that before we are born, there is an angel teaching us the whole Torah. And then when we are born, the angel touches our lip, and then we forget all the Torah that we learned from that angel. In fact, the rabbi said that's why we have this thing here in the lip, right in between the nose and the lip. That is the mark of the finger of the angel. And it's a reminder that we had Torah already inside ourselves, which is an interesting concept, because when you're studying Torah, you're not really studying the Torah, you are remembering the Torah. So it's something that Torah is already in you. It's just that you don't remember where it is. So you cannot tap into that wisdom, into that knowledge, because you don't know how to. So when you come and you study Torah, you are not learning anything new. What you're doing is to find the way to tap into that wisdom that is already inside you. And the Rabbi said that's why we have such satisfaction whenever we learn something new. And it's Torah related, because it's not really new. It's the same kind of satisfaction that we have when we find something that we thought it was lost. Has it ever happened to you that you thought that you lost something and many years later you open a drawer in the basement and oh my gosh, here it is? And then we feel this satisfaction because we thought it was lost, but then we find it again. So this is what Torah study should feel like. That is not something that you are learning for the first time, something that you are remembering. Shelley, you said reconnecting. Yeah, you're reconnecting with something that you thought it was lost forever, but then all of a sudden you realize that it's not. That it was always there. Only problem is we cannot connect with that. It's a beautiful Kabbalistic concept. That's why they say whenever we died, and we don't have the physical limitations as a veil between ourselves and the Torah, then when we died and we are pure soul, then we remember all the Torah immediately, everything. And that's the moment where we realize all the good things we did and all the things that we actually failed, because now we know that truth without any filter. Yeah, deep inside. That's correct. So let's continue with the next text. It says, another rabbi talking about Rabbi Akiva. How could people doze off while the great Rabbi Akiva was teaching? The audience, in their imperfect spiritual state, felt no connection to the lofty Torah thought that Rabbi Akiva was expounding. Rabbi Akiva sought to dispel these negative feelings, for he knew that each and every person has the potential to attain the level of the patriarchs, and as such, every person has an obligation to strive towards this goal. Rabbi Akiva cited Esther as an example. Esther could have easily been depressed about her situation. Forcibly married to the evil king Ahasuerus, and separated from her people. Yet, she realized that if Hashem placed her in such state, it was for a purpose. She has faith in the divine plan. She learned this outlook from Sarah, whose days were all perfect. Even the days of her youth in Haran's household, which surely was not spiritually exalted as the household of Abraham. Yet, Hashem considered all his days perfect, because she excelled in every situation in which she found herself. Rabbi Akiva, she found herself, should be right. Let's correct it right there. Rabbi Akiva explained to his audience that lofty Torah wisdom is attainable regardless of one's current spiritual state. What a wonderful teaching, especially in these days when everything seems to be going wrong. And Sarah and Esther are both teaching us the same thing, that we have to find a way to see the blessing behind everything that is coming our way, because everything is in God's hand. As I said, either you believe that everything is in God's hand or maybe nothing is. But this kind of an in-between, it's, I don't know, I don't feel comforted by the in-between approach. See, remember the movie, the Karate Kid? This is not one of the famous part. Everybody remember the, wax on, wax off, that kind of thing, the Karate Kid. But I remember when Mr. Miyagi teaches Daniel-san, that he says, Daniel-san, there is karate yes, and there is karate no. I said, but if you are in between, you get squashed like a bug, right? It's like Yeah. You know, I said sometimes Shelley, you said sometimes the way isn't always clear. That's why we talk to you. Well, yeah, of course. I think the way is never clear. We never know. We never know what's going to happen. It's that's what faith is about. I believe this is what happened. I believe people have a misconception of what faith is. Sometimes we believe that the person of faith is the one that, has a strong faith because they know the outcome. I know God is going to be there for me and I know this is going to happen. But that's not faith. I'm sorry. Because faith is all the opposite. Faith is not certainty. Faith is the ability to deal with uncertainty. Faith is important and necessary because we don't know what is going to happen. The problem is, if we live life with expectations of knowing exactly what is going to happen, we are going to be disappointed every single time because we don't know God's plan for our lives. We don't. Who knew a couple of years ago that we are going to go through this kind of pandemics, that is going to last this long? I've seen businesses and institutions that they failed because they thought that they knew the outcomes. This is going to be away in a couple of months. We are going to go back to normal. Don't worry. Don't make any changes. And then they failed. So I believe that faith is important because we don't know what is going to happen, but we trust that God is still in control of the world. And that's pretty much what faith is in a nutshell. We don't know, but we trust. That's what it is. Shelley, you said Martin Buber. Oh, of course you're quoting Martin Buber. Wrote on this very topic, faith and belief. Yeah, and if you want to explore more about this, I recommend all the writings of Reb Nachman of Breslov. I think nobody wrote it better than him, what faith or emunah really is. And I discovered by reading him that is all the opposite from certainty. All the opposite. And I feel bad because some people believe that that's what faith is. Faith is certainty. It's all the opposite. Faith is uncertainty. Yeah. Any questions? Because that was the last text for today. No questions? Okay. So we are going to see each other, hopefully, next week, right? With another class. We are going to study next week's Parsha. And by the way, again, if you haven't subscribed yet to our channel, please do so. Click there. And also the bell. It's very important. So you will be notified every time we go live and every time that we upload some material to our channels. So once again, thank you for being there. Stay safe. Have a wonderful day and hope to see you next time. Bye for now.